The judge looked down at me from the bench, her eyes moving from the medical photograph spread across her desk to my face, where the faint yellow-green remnants of bruises still shadowed my left cheekbone. "Mrs. Northwood," she said quietly, "are you absolutely certain you want to proceed with this?" I nodded, my hands folded calmly in my lap. Behind me, I could hear Malcolm's expensive lawyer shuffling papers, preparing objections. Next to me sat my attorney, Elena Briggs, a woman with steel-gray hair and sharper instincts. "Your Honor," Malcolm's voice cut through the courtroom. That familiar smooth baritone that once made my heart flutter. Now it just made my stomach turn. "This is a complete fabrication. My wife has always been prone to dramatics. She's trying to destroy me professionally because she's angry about—" "Mr. Northwood," the judge interrupted, her tone icy, "I suggest you remain silent until your attorney speaks for you." I didn't turn around to look at him. I didn't need to. I could feel his rage radiating from 3 rows back, could imagine his jaw clenching the way it always did when someone told him no. Elena leaned closer to me. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded again. My hand went to my purse, fingers closing around the small USB drive inside. "Your Honor," Elena stood, her voice clear and strong, "the petitioner would like to submit additional evidence to support the emergency protective order and petition for divorce." She handed the USB drive to the bailiff, who plugged it into the courtroom's media system. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. And there, in high definition, was my kitchen from yesterday morning. The camera angle was perfect. I'd positioned my phone carefully on top of the refrigerator before Malcolm came downstairs. The timestamp read 7:23 a.m. On screen, I watched myself moving around the kitchen, my face still swollen and bruised from the night before. I was making breakfast, just like I had every morning for 8 years. Eggs, toast, coffee, the perfect wife. Then Malcolm entered the frame. The courtroom went absolutely silent as everyone watched him walk up behind me, grab my arm, spin me around, and slap me across the face so hard I stumbled into the counter. "I told you I wanted the eggs scrambled, not fried, you stupid bitch," his voice echoed through the speakers. "Can't you do anything right?" I watched myself on screen, one hand pressed to my reddening cheek, and I saw myself smile. That's what made Malcolm freeze on the video. That smile. "You're right, baby," my recorded voice said sweetly. "I'm so sorry. Let me fix that for you." What happened next made several people in the courtroom gasp. I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out an envelope, a thick manila envelope with an attorney's office logo in the corner. "While you're waiting for your eggs," I said on the video, my voice steady and calm, "maybe you should read this." Malcolm snatched it from my hand, ripped it open. I watched his face drain of color as he read. "Divorce papers?" He looked up at the camera at me with absolute shock. "Are you fucking serious right now?" "Completely serious." I turned back to the stove, cracked new eggs into the pan. "I'm also serious about the protective order that's being filed this morning. And the police report about last night. And the affidavit from Dr. Harrison documenting my injuries. You can't do this." His voice dropped to that dangerous low tone I knew so well. "You have nothing. No money. No job. No proof of anything." "Actually," I said, still calmly scrambling the eggs, "I have 8 years of proof. Every bruise, every threat, every time you drained our joint account to spend on her." That's when his face changed. The color that had drained away came rushing back, crimson with rage. "What the fuck are you talking about?" I plated the eggs, set them in front of him with a glass of orange juice, then pulled out my phone, the same phone recording everything from atop the refrigerator. "I'm talking about Simone, Malcolm. Your colleague, your mentee, the woman you've been fucking for 2 years while I played the obedient wife." I scrolled through my phone and showed him the screen. Even from the camera angle on top of the fridge, the courtroom could see the photos clearly. Malcolm and Simone at a restaurant. Malcolm and Simone entering a hotel. Malcolm and Simone in our vacation home upstate, the one I wasn't allowed to visit because he needed it for work retreats. "I hired a private investigator 6 months ago," I continued, my voice never losing that unsettling calm. "Turns out you've been very busy. Also turns out that Simone isn't just your mistress. She's your business partner in the consulting firm you started last year. the one you funded entirely with money from our joint accounts, the money from my inheritance after my father died. Malcolm's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, squeezing until I could see my fingers turning white on the video. "You lying cunt," he hissed. "You think you can threaten me? Do you have any idea what I'll do to you?" "Actually," I said, looking directly into his eyes, "I know exactly what you'll do, because I've been recording you for 6 months, Malcolm. Every threat, every bruise, every time you told me I was worthless, stupid, ugly, lucky to have you." I pulled my wrist from his grip and pointed at the refrigerator at the phone. "Smile for the camera, baby. This is going to look great in divorce court." The video ended there. The courtroom remained silent for a long moment. Then the judge looked at Malcolm, who had gone absolutely gray. "Mr. Northwood," she said, her voice like ice, "I'm granting the emergency protective order. You are to have no contact with Mrs. Northwood. No calls, no texts, no emails, no third-party contact. You are to vacate the marital residence within 24 hours. Do you understand?" "Your Honor, this is," his lawyer began. "Do you understand?" the judge repeated, louder. "Yes," Malcolm choked out. "Good, we're adjourned. I'll see counsel in my chambers in 10 minutes to discuss the divorce proceedings and potential criminal charges." As the bailiff called everyone to rise, I finally turned around to look at Malcolm. He stared at me with pure hatred, but underneath it, I could see something else, fear. "Good. Let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you about the 8 years I spent as Malcolm Northwood's perfect wife, and how one night, one bruise too many, turned me from victim into victor. Before I continue, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And if this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. 8 years ago, I met Malcolm at a gallery opening in Brooklyn. I was 24, fresh out of grad school with a degree in art history and a job as a junior curator at a small museum. He was 29, already a rising star at a prestigious consulting firm, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and exuding confidence. "You know," he said, appearing at my elbow as I studied a particularly aggressive abstract piece, "the artist once said, 'This painting represents the destruction of traditional masculinity.'" I glanced at him, unimpressed. The artist also said it was about his mother's lasagna recipe. He was high when he painted it. Malcolm laughed, a genuine surprised sound. "You actually know Sebastian Mora? I curated his last show. Trust me, there's no deep meaning, just drugs and Italian food." We talked for the rest of the evening. He was charming, intelligent, funny. He listened when I talked about my work, asked thoughtful questions, seemed genuinely interested in my opinions. When he asked for my number, I gave it without hesitation. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Malcolm pursued me with single-minded intensity, flowers delivered to the museum, surprise dinner reservations at restaurants I'd mentioned wanting to try, weekend trips to art shows in Philadelphia and D.C. He made me feel special, seen, important. My best friend Violet had doubts from the start. "He's moving awful fast, Raina," she said over drinks one night, about a month into the relationship. "You barely know him." "I know he makes me happy," I replied, twirling the stem of my wine glass. "I know he treats me like I matter." "Does he let you treat him like he matters? Or is it all him doing things for you, making decisions for you?" I'd laughed it off then. Violet was always suspicious of men, always seeing red flags, but she had a point I wasn't ready to hear. Malcolm didn't ask what I wanted. He told me what I would love. And at first, he was always right. The restaurant was perfect. The trip was magical. The gift was exactly what I needed. It wasn't until much later that I realized he was training me, teaching me that he knew best, that I should trust his judgment over my own, that resistance was met with disappointment and compliance with reward. We got married 10 months after we met. It was his idea, his timeline, but I convinced myself I wanted it too. The wedding was beautiful, expensive, elegant, full of his colleagues and clients. My family was there, my mother crying happy tears, my father looking uncomfortable in his rented tux. Violet was my maid of honor, smiling for the photos but squeezing my hand a little too tight when she hugged me. "You can still back out," she whispered during the reception. "Just say the word." "I'm happy," I told her, and I believed it. The first year was good. Malcolm was attentive, generous. We moved into a beautiful brownstone apartment in Park Slope that his signing bonus covered. He encouraged me to keep working at the museum, said he loved having an intelligent, cultured wife. But small things started to change. "That dress is a little too tight, don't you think?" he'd say when I got ready for a work event. "You don't want people getting the wrong impression. Maybe you shouldn't go out with Violet so much. She's always trying to cause problems between us." Did you really need to contradict me in front of my boss? It made me look bad. Each criticism was delivered with concern, with love, with the explanation that he was just looking out for me. And each time, I'd apologize, adjust, comply. The museum job ended in year 2. Budget cuts, they said, and I was the newest curator. Malcolm comforted me, told me not to worry about money. "Take some time off," he said. "Figure out what you really want to do. No pressure." I applied to other museums, galleries, cultural institutions, but Malcolm always had a reason why each opportunity wasn't quite right. "That commute would be terrible. You'd never see me. The salary is insulting. You're worth more than that. I don't like the neighborhood. It's not safe." After 6 months of rejections and objections, I stopped applying. Malcolm suggested I focus on the home, on supporting his career. His firm was promoting him, giving him bigger clients, more responsibility. He needed a wife who could host dinner parties, who could charm his colleagues, who could make him look good. And I was so good at it. I became the perfect corporate wife, impeccably dressed, gracious, knowledgeable enough to contribute to conversations, but not so much that I overshadowed the men. I planned elaborate dinner parties, remembered everyone's dietary restrictions and spouses' names, sent thoughtful thank you notes. Malcolm's colleagues loved me. "You're so lucky," they'd tell him. "Raina is absolutely wonderful." And Malcolm would smile, put his arm around me, pull me close. "I know," he'd say. "She's perfect." But perfect wasn't enough. It was never enough. The first time he hit me was 3 years into our marriage. We'd hosted a dinner party for one of his biggest clients. Everything had gone smoothly, the food was excellent, the wine flowed, the conversation sparkled. The client left happy, promising to sign the contract. After everyone left, I started cleaning up. Malcolm poured himself a scotch and sat at the kitchen island, watching me. "You talked too much tonight," he said suddenly. I looked up from the sink, surprised. "What?" "During dinner, you monopolized the conversation about that museum exhibit. Richard was trying to talk about the market, and you kept bringing it back to art." "Richard asked me about the exhibit," I said slowly. "He specifically asked my opinion." "You made me look bad." Malcolm's voice was flat. "Like I can't control my own wife." "Control?" The word felt strange in my mouth. "Malcolm, I was just having a conversation." He stood up, crossed the kitchen. I could smell the scotch on his breath as he got close. "You embarrassed me," he said quietly. "In my own home, in front of my client." Then his hand shot out and grabbed my face, fingers digging into my cheeks. "Don't do it again." He released me and walked away, leaving me standing there with red marks on my face and shock numbing my brain. He apologized the next morning, brought me coffee in bed, kissed my forehead, told me he'd been stressed about work, and "I know you didn't mean anything by it, baby. I just got in my head. You know how I get." And I forgave him. Because that's what you do when you love someone, right? Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has bad days. It didn't happen again for 6 months. But when it did, it was worse. Year 5 of our marriage was when things really started to unravel, though I was still too deep in it to see clearly. Malcolm's career was soaring. He'd made partner at his firm, was pulling in huge clients, traveling constantly, and I was home, alone, managing our perfect life. Violet still called, though I made excuses more often than not when she wanted to meet up. "Raina, I miss you," she said one afternoon when I finally answered her call. "I feel like I never see you anymore." "I know, I'm sorry. Malcolm's just been so busy, and with all the entertaining." "When was the last time you did something for yourself? Not for Malcolm, not for his career, for you?" I couldn't remember. The museum rejection letters had stopped coming because I'd stopped applying. My art history degree gathered metaphorical dust. My days consisted of gym classes, Malcolm insisted I attend. You want to keep in shape, don't you? Grocery shopping, meal planning, and waiting for my husband to come home. I'm fine, Vi, really. You're not fine. You're disappearing. But I didn't want to hear it. Couldn't hear it. Because if I admitted Violet was right, I'd have to admit I'd made a terrible mistake. That the fairy tale was a nightmare. That the man I'd married was systematically erasing me. The physical abuse was still sporadic, a shove here, a grab there, once a slap that he immediately apologized for, blamed on work stress, promised would never happen again. Each incident was followed by flowers, apologies, explanations about pressure at the firm. And then came the financial control I hadn't even noticed happening. One day, I went to use our joint credit card and it was declined. I called Malcolm, confused. "Oh, right," he said casually. "I moved some things around. The account structure is more tax efficient now. I'll get you a new card." The new card had a $500 monthly limit. "For household expenses," Malcolm explained. "Everything else goes through the main account that I manage. It's just easier this way. Less paperwork." "But what if I need—" "Need what, Raina? What could you possibly need that costs more than $500? You don't work. You don't have expenses. I pay for everything." And there it was. The truth underneath all the flowers and apologies. I was completely dependent on him. No job, no income, no access to real money. That night, I went through our financial records. Malcolm had always handled the money I'd been happy to let him, grateful even, since numbers weren't my strong suit. But what I found made my blood run cold. Our joint savings account, the one that had held my inheritance from my father, $175,000, that Dad had left me when he died of a heart attack in year 3 of my marriage, was nearly empty. Just $3,247 remained. I confronted Malcolm as soon as he got home. "Where's the money from my father?" He barely looked up from his phone. "Investments." "What investments? I never agreed to invest that money. You put me on the account, Raina. That means I can manage it as I see fit, and I saw fit to invest in some opportunities." "What opportunities?" Finally, he looked at me, and the expression on his face, cold, dismissive, made me take a step back. "You wouldn't understand the details. Trust me, it's growing. You'll thank me later. I want to see the statements." "No." "Excuse me?" Malcolm stood up, crossed the living room to where I stood frozen. He was taller than me, broader, and he used every inch of that size to intimidate. "I said no. I handle the money because I'm good at it. You handle the house because that's what you're good at. Stop questioning me. It's my inheritance." His hand cracked across my face before I could finish the sentence. I stumbled backward, hand flying to my stinging cheek, ears ringing. "Your inheritance?" Malcolm's voice was soft, dangerous. "You mean the money your father left because he didn't trust you to take care of yourself? The money that would have been wasted on your little art projects if I hadn't taken control of it?" Tears blurred my vision. "Malcolm, go to bed, Raina. We're done discussing this." I went. Not because I wanted to, but because I was scared. Truly scared. Maybe for the first time in our marriage. That night, lying in the dark while Malcolm snored beside me, I made a decision. I needed to know the truth about our finances, about where my father's money had gone, about what Malcolm was hiding. The next day, while Malcolm was at work, I went through his home office, his desk drawers, his filing cabinet, his laptop that he usually kept locked but had left open that morning in his rush. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Malcolm hadn't invested my inheritance. He'd spent it. $175,000. Gone in just over 2 years. Private plane tickets to Miami, Vegas, the Caribbean, hotel suites at the Four Seasons, the Ritz, boutique resorts I'd never heard of, jewelry from Tiffany, handbags from Hermes, dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants. None of it for me. I'd never been to Miami, never stayed at the Four Seasons, never owned a Hermes bag. All of it, according to the credit card statements I found, happened during Malcolm's business trips. All of it charged to the account funded by my dead father's money. And then I found the emails, hundreds of them, going back 3 years, all to the same address, simone.pierce@northwoodconsulting.com. Simone. His colleague. The woman he'd mentioned occasionally in passing, brilliant strategist, real asset to the team, reminds me of you, actually, smart and driven. I opened the most recent email, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the mouse. Can't wait for Aruba next month. Just booked the villa. And yes, I'll make sure Raina thinks I'm in Chicago for that conference. She never questions it anymore. Too beaten down, literally. I closed the laptop, walked calmly to the bathroom, and vomited. When I was done, when I'd rinsed my mouth and washed my face and stared at my reflection thin, pale, hollow-eyed, a shadow of the bright 4-year-old who'd met a charming man at a gallery, I went back to the office. And I started copying everything. Every email, every receipt, every bank statement, every credit card transaction. I uploaded it all to a cloud drive Malcolm didn't know about, using an email address I created right then and there. It took me 3 hours. When I was done, I had documentation of every penny he'd stolen from me, every trip he'd taken with her, every lie he'd told. But I didn't confront him. Not then, because I realized something important. Knowledge was power, but timing was everything. I needed a plan. I needed to be smart. I needed to be ready. Because Malcolm Northwood had taken 8 years of my life, my money, my dignity, my self-worth. He'd isolated me from my friends, stolen my father's legacy, and beaten me when I dared to question him. And I was going to make sure he paid for every single second of it. The next morning, I woke up with bruises blooming purple and yellow across my cheekbone, where Malcolm's hand had connected. He'd left early for the office without waking me, or maybe I'd pretended to be asleep when I heard him moving around. Either way, I was grateful for the solitude. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, cataloging the damage. This wasn't the first bruise, but it was the most visible. Usually, Malcolm was careful. A shove into a wall that left marks hidden under clothing. Fingers gripping my arm hard enough to leave fingerprint-shaped bruises that long sleeves covered. Once, a yank of my hair so violent I'd found a bald patch that I'd strategically arranged my style to hide. But this was different. This was my face. This couldn't be hidden with turtlenecks and long sleeves. I took out my phone and photographed it from multiple angles, dating each photo. Then I opened a new document and started typing everything I remembered about last night. The question about my inheritance, his refusal to show me statements, the slap, his exact words. I saved it to the same cloud drive where I'd stored the financial records. Then I called Dr. Lisa Harrison, my primary care physician. We'd known each other since I was 20, back when I first moved to New York. She'd watched my weight drop over the years, had asked gentle questions about my home life that I'd always deflected. Dr. Harrison's office, the receptionist answered. Hi, this is Raina Northwood. I need to schedule an emergency appointment. Today, if possible. What's the nature of the emergency? I touched my cheek gently. I've been injured. I need documentation. There was a pause. We can get you in at 2 p.m. At the appointment, Dr. Harrison's face went tight when she saw my face. How did this happen, Raina? My husband hit me. The words felt strange, honest, and exposed in a way I'd avoided for years. But I was done lying, done covering. Dr. Harrison examined me carefully, took photographs, documented every bruise she found, including ones I hadn't mentioned, old ones fading yellow-green on my ribs, my upper arms, my thighs. Raina, she said gently, sitting across from me after the exam. This shows a pattern of ongoing abuse. The bruises are in different stages of healing. Some are weeks old. I know. Do you have somewhere safe you can go? Not yet, but I'm working on it. She handed me several pamphlets about domestic violence resources, shelters, legal aid. Please consider reaching out to these organizations. And Raina, this documentation will hold up in court, if and when you're ready to use it. Thank you. I left with a sealed envelope containing the medical report, photographs, and doctor Harrison's professional opinion that my injuries were consistent with intimate partner violence. That envelope went into a safe deposit box I opened at a bank across town, one Malcolm didn't know about. I paid for it with cash. I'd been secretly withdrawing from the grocery budget, $20 here, $30 there, over the course of months. It wasn't much, but it was something. My next stop was the public library. I couldn't risk researching from home in case Malcolm checked the browser history. At the library, I searched for divorce attorneys, making notes on ones who specialized in high-asset divorces and domestic violence cases. One name kept appearing in the results: Elena Briggs. 58 years old, former prosecutor, now one of the top divorce attorneys in the city with a particular focus on protecting abuse victims. Her reviews were stellar. Doesn't back down, fights like hell, got me everything I deserved. I called her office from a burner phone I'd bought with my secret cash stash. "Briggs Family Law," a professional voice answered. "I'd like to schedule a consultation with Miss Briggs. Regarding a divorce. Are you in immediate danger?" "Not immediate, but yes, there's abuse involved. Can you come in tomorrow at 9 a.m.? Miss Briggs makes time for urgent cases." The next morning, I told Malcolm I had a dentist appointment. He barely looked up from his phone. "Fine. Don't forget we have dinner at the Wainwrights on Saturday. Wear the blue dress." "Of course." Elena Briggs's office was in Midtown, all glass and steel and competence. The woman herself was shorter than I expected, with steel gray hair and a sleek bob and sharp dark eyes that assessed me the moment I walked in. "Mrs. Northwood," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Please sit. Tell me everything." I did. I told her about the 8 years of marriage, the gradual isolation, the loss of my career, the financial control, the escalating violence. I showed her the medical report, the photographs, the files I'd copied to a USB drive, every email, every receipt, every transaction. Elena's expression never changed as she reviewed the evidence, but her eyes got harder with each page. "He stole your inheritance and spent it on his mistress," she said flatly. "Yes. And he's been physically abusing you for years." "Yes." "How long have you been planning this, Raina?" 2 days. Elena looked up sharply. 2 days? You gathered all this evidence in 2 days? "I've been living it for 8 years. I knew where to look." A smile ghosted across Elena's face, there and gone. "Good. That's the spirit I need to see. Now, here's what we're going to do." She laid out a strategy that made my heart race. Document everything. Record interactions when possible. New York was a one-party consent state, which meant I could legally record conversations I was part of without Malcolm's knowledge. Gather more evidence of the affair, of the financial theft. Build a case so airtight that Malcolm wouldn't be able to wriggle free. "This isn't just about divorce," Elena said. "This is about justice. He stole from you, assaulted you, committed fraud. I want to see him lose everything. Can you do what needs to be done?" I thought about my father's money, spent on another woman, about the bruises hidden under my clothes, about 8 years of slowly disappearing. "Yes," I said. "I can. Then let's get to work." If this story is making your blood boil like mine was, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, the revenge gets so much better. Your support means everything to this channel. The private investigator Elena recommended was named Marcus Reed, former NYPD detective, now working private cases. He was maybe 60, black, with graying temples and the kind of alert, assessing gaze that missed nothing. "Your husband's already on my radar," he said when we met at a coffee shop in Queens, far from anywhere Malcolm or his colleagues might be. "I've tailed him on 3 separate occasions for other clients. He's not as careful as he thinks." "Other clients?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Let's just say you're not the first person who's wanted documentation of Mr. Northwood's activities. Though you're the first wife." He showed me photos on his tablet. Malcolm and Simone entering a hotel in Midtown. Malcolm and Simone at a restaurant in Brooklyn, her hand on his thigh under the table. Malcolm and Simone at JFK, boarding a flight. I checked the date, February. The Chicago conference he'd been at for 5 days. "How long have they been together?" I asked, staring at a photo of Malcolm kissing Simone's neck. "At least 3 years that I can document. Probably longer." 3 years. The same timeline as the theft of my inheritance. It wasn't coincidence. "I need you to find out everything," I said. "I want to know where they go, what they do, what they talk about. I want to know if he's planning to leave me for her, and I want to know about the business." "What business?" I pulled out the documents I'd found. Northwood Consulting. It was registered last year as an LLC. Malcolm is listed as CEO. Simone Pierce is listed as COO. According to these filings, the initial capital investment was $150,000. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Your inheritance. My inheritance? He started a business with my dead father's money and didn't tell me, didn't put my name on it. The company is solely in his and Simone's names. That's fraud. That's why I need documentation. I want to prove he stole from me to build a business with his mistress. Consider it done. Over the next month, Marcus tailed Malcolm and Simone relentlessly. The evidence he gathered was damning. They met for lunch 3 times a week at a hotel restaurant, always getting a room afterward. Receipts showed charges to Malcolm's corporate card, another thing funded by my money. They went on weekend trips together, while Malcolm told me he was at conferences or client meetings, Miami, Boston, Napa Valley. Always staying in luxury hotels, always charged to accounts he controlled. And most damningly, Marcus managed to record a conversation between them at a restaurant. New York's one-party consent law didn't apply since neither Marcus nor I was part of the conversation, but Elena assured me we could use it to support our case for fraud and alienation of affections. I listened to that recording in Elena's office, Marcus and Elena both watching my face. Simone's voice came through clear. When are you going to leave her? I'm tired of sneaking around, Malcolm. We have the business now. We don't need her money anymore. Soon, Malcolm's voice replied. I just need to wait for the right time. If I file now, she could claim half of Northwood Consulting. It's better to let things settle. Maybe transfer some assets, and then serve her. And then what? She just accepts it? Malcolm laughed. That same laugh I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, now turned cruel. Raina? She'll do whatever I tell her to. She's got no fight left. No money, no job, no friends. Where's she going to go? She'll sign whatever I put in front of her, grateful I don't leave her completely broke. You're bad, Simone giggled. I'm practical. Besides, she's gotten boring, clingy. She used to be interesting, but that was a long time ago. Now she's just... There. The recording clicked off. I sat very still, processing. Are you okay? Elena asked gently. I'm fine. And I was. Because the hurt had transformed into something else, something cold and sharp and focused. There's more, Marcus said. He pulled up more files on his tablet. Financial records for Northwood Consulting. Your husband has been funneling money from the joint account into the business for months, not just the initial $150K, another $73,000 over the past year. I'd had no idea. I'd been living on a $500 monthly allowance while Malcolm spent my inheritance building a future with another woman. What's the business even do? I asked. According to the website, they're a boutique consulting firm specializing in corporate strategy for mid-size companies. They have 3 clients currently. But here's the interesting part. Marcus swiped to another document. All 3 clients are also clients of Malcolm's firm. He's essentially competing with his employer using their own client list. That's a breach of his employment contract, Elena said, leaning forward. Most consulting firms have non-compete and non-solicitation clauses. This one does, Marcus confirmed. I pulled his contract. He's explicitly forbidden from starting a competing business or soliciting his employer's clients for 2 years after leaving the firm. If they find out, he'll be fired and sued, Elena finished. This keeps getting better. So what do we do? I asked. Elena and Marcus exchanged a look. We have enough for the divorce, Elena said. The abuse, the affair, the financial fraud. But if we want to really destroy him, we need to expose the business to his firm. Let them take care of the professional consequences while we handle the personal ones. How? An anonymous tip to his managing partner, with just enough documentation to start an internal investigation. Once they dig into it, they'll find everything we found. I thought about Malcolm's face when I'd asked about my inheritance, his casual cruelty, the way he'd stolen years of my life. Do it, I said. The trap was set. Marcus had sent the anonymous tip to Malcolm's managing partner, a man named Richard Aldridge. Elena had divorce papers prepared, along with motions for an emergency protective order, temporary support, and asset freezing. All we needed was the right moment. That moment came 2 weeks later. Malcolm had been even more irritable than usual, snapping at me over small things. Dinner wasn't ready when he got home. I'd forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. I'd worn the wrong dress to a client dinner. The violence had escalated too. A shove into the wall that left a bruise on my shoulder blade. Fingers wrapped around my throat for just a second, long enough to terrify, not long enough to leave marks. A slap across the face when I asked if he was having an affair. "Stop being paranoid," he'd hissed after that slap. "I work, that's all I do, while you sit here doing nothing all day." I'd apologized, like always. Retreated, like always. Played the role of broken, beaten wife. But in my purse was my phone, recording everything. In my safe deposit box was evidence of everything he'd done. In Elena's office was a plan to destroy him. I just needed one more piece. One more recording. One more incident that would seal his fate. It came on a Tuesday night. Malcolm came home late, after 9 p.m. I could smell perfume on him, something expensive and floral that definitely wasn't mine. Simone's signature scent, I realized. He'd been with her. "Dinner's in the oven," I said quietly, not looking up from the book I was pretending to read. I ate. Of course he had. With her. He poured himself a scotch, loosened his tie, sat across from me in the living room. "We need to talk," he said. My heart started pounding, but I kept my face calm. "About what?" "About us. About this marriage." "Okay." "It's not working, Raina. You have to see that." I put my book down slowly, meeting his eyes. In my pocket, my phone was recording. "What do you mean?" "I mean we're not happy. I'm not happy. Haven't been for a while." "Malcolm." "Let me finish." He took a sip of scotch. "I think we need some space. Maybe a separation. You could stay here, and I could get a place for a while. Figure things out. A separation. So he could move in with Simone, probably. Continue using marital assets to fund their life together while I stayed in our apartment, alone and powerless." "I don't want a separation," I said. His jaw tightened. "It's not really up for discussion." "Our marriage is not up for discussion?" "Raina, don't make this harder than it needs to be." "How am I making it hard?" "I'm saying I don't want to separate." "And I'm saying we are." He stood up, started pacing. "I need space. I need time to think without you always there. Always needing something. Always what?" I stood too. "Always existing? Always being your wife?" "Don't twist my words." "I'm not twisting anything. You want to leave me so you can be with Simone." The color drained from his face. "What?" "Simone Pierce, your colleague. Your business partner. Your mistress." "I don't know what you're—" "I know everything, Malcolm. The trips, the hotels, the business you started with my inheritance, every lie you've told me for 3 years. His expression shifted from shock to rage so fast it would have been frightening if I hadn't been prepared for it. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been protecting myself." He crossed the room in 3 strides, got right in my face. "You have no right." "I have every right. You stole from me. You hit me. You humiliated me." His hand shot out and grabbed my throat. Not squeezing, but firm enough to warn. "Careful, Raina. You're making serious accusations." "They're not accusations. They're facts." His grip tightened slightly. I could feel my pulse against his palm. "If you know what's good for you," he said softly, "you'll drop this. All of it. The suspicions, the snooping, whatever you think you know. Because if you don't, I will make your life hell. You already have." That's when he really lost it. His hand moved from my throat to my face, squeezing my cheeks so hard I could feel my teeth cutting the inside of my mouth. "You ungrateful bitch. I gave you everything. A home, a life, security. And this is how you repay me? You gave me nothing but pain." He shoved me backward. I stumbled, fell, hit the coffee table with my hip. Pain exploded through my side. Malcolm stood over me, breathing hard. "Get up." "No." I said, "Get up. Make me." He reached down, grabbed my arm, hauled me to my feet. Then his hand pulled back and came forward, slapping me across the face so hard my ears rang and I tasted blood. "I should have divorced you years ago," he spat. "Should have left you with nothing." "Maybe I still will." He let me go and I collapsed back onto the couch, my face throbbing, my hips screaming. "I'm going out," Malcolm said, grabbing his jacket. "When I come back, I want you to have your head on straight. No more accusations, no more drama. You understand me? I looked up at him through the hair falling across my face and smiled. Actually smiled. I understand perfectly. He left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. The moment his footsteps faded down the hall, I pulled out my phone. The recording was crystal clear. Every word, every threat, every sound of violence. I called Elena. "It's time," I said when she answered. "I have what we need. Tomorrow morning I'm serving him. Are you safe tonight?" He left. "I don't think he's coming back until late." "Good. Come to my office first thing. We'll prepare everything." I hung up and went to the bathroom to assess the damage. New bruises blooming on my cheek, my hip, my arm where he'd grabbed me, blood in my mouth where my teeth had cut the inside of my cheek. I photographed all of it, documenting everything methodically. Then I went to the bedroom and packed a bag. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, important documents, jewelry my mother had given me, everything I might need. I called Violet. "Raina?" She answered on the first ring. "Oh my God, I've been so worried. You haven't called in." "I need your help," I said. "Can I stay with you for a while?" "Of course, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "Not yet," I said, "but I will be." I left the apartment at midnight with my bag and my evidence and 8 years of pain transforming into purpose. Malcolm didn't know it yet, but his perfect life was about to come crashing down. And I was going to be the one holding the sledgehammer. I spent the night at Violet's apartment in Queens, telling her everything over tea and tears. She held me while I cried, cursed Malcolm's name, and promised to be there for whatever I needed. "I knew," she said at one point. "I knew something was wrong. I should have pushed harder. I wouldn't have listened. I had to get here on my own." At dawn, I was in Elena's office, finalizing every detail. "The protective order will be filed this morning," Elena explained. "Based on the medical evidence, the recordings, and your testimony, I'm confident the judge will grant it. That means Malcolm has to vacate the marital residence within 24 hours. What about the business? That's trickier, because your name isn't on it, and you can't prove you contributed to it directly. I can prove my money funded it." "Exactly. We're going to argue that the $150,000 used to start Northwood Consulting was marital property that he converted for his personal use without your consent. Combined with the affair, the abuse, and his fraudulent depletion of marital assets, we'll request the court assign you a percentage ownership or monetary compensation equivalent to your contribution plus damages." "How much are we talking?" Elena smiled. "The business has been valued at approximately $800,000 based on current client contracts and projected revenue. If we can prove he used $223,000 of marital funds to start and run it, I'd say you're entitled to at least 50% ownership or a cash payout of $400,000. My head spun. That was more than twice what he'd stolen from me. "And that doesn't include the apartment, the cars, his retirement accounts, or spousal support," Elena continued. "By the time we're done, Malcolm Northwood is going to wish he'd never laid a hand on you." "What about the criminal charges?" "The assault, you mean? That's separate from the divorce proceedings. You can file a police report, press charges. The recordings and medical documentation make it a strong case." I thought about Malcolm in handcuffs, being led away. The idea should have satisfied me, but it felt almost too clean. I wanted more than legal consequences. What about his firm? The non-compete violation? Marcus sent them the evidence yesterday. I imagine they're in the process of investigating right now. Perfect. All the pieces were in place. "There's one more thing," I said. "I want to serve him the papers myself." Elena raised her eyebrows. "That's highly unusual. We typically have a process server. I want to be there. I want to see his face when he realizes what's happening." Elena studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. We'll arrange it. But Raina, be careful. Cornered animals are dangerous. So are women with nothing left to lose." We decided on the breakfast approach. I would go back to the apartment the next morning, before Malcolm left for work. I'd make him breakfast like always, play the dutiful wife one last time, then I'd serve him. But before any of that, I had one more thing to do. That evening, I went back to the apartment while Malcolm was at work. I had my key still, and the doorman knew me. I rode the elevator up to our floor with my heart pounding. Inside, everything looked the same. Our home, or what had been our home. Now it just looked like a stage set. A beautiful prison I was about to escape. I set up my phone on top of the refrigerator, angled perfectly to capture the kitchen. Then I went through the apartment methodically, collecting my personal items, photos of my family, my mother's jewelry, books I'd brought into the marriage. I boxed everything up and took it to Violet's in 3 trips. When I was done, the apartment felt hollow, like I'd already left. The next morning, I woke up before dawn at Violet's place. She made me coffee, squeezed my hand. "You sure about this?" she asked. Never been more sure of anything. I dressed carefully. Not in the expensive clothes Malcolm preferred, the designer dresses and heels that made me look like a trophy. Instead, I wore jeans and a simple blouse. My hair was pulled back, no makeup to hide the fading bruises. I wanted him to see what he'd done. Elena met me outside the building with the divorce papers in a manila envelope. "Last chance to back out," she said. Not backing out. We rode up together. Elena would wait in the hallway, ready to intervene if Malcolm became violent. I unlocked the door and went inside. Malcolm was still asleep. I started making breakfast, my movements automatic after 8 years. Eggs, toast, coffee. The perfect wife's routine. The phone on top of the fridge was recording everything. I heard Malcolm get up, shower, start moving around. At 7:15, he came into the kitchen in his suit, checking his phone. "You're here early," he said, not looking up. "Thought you were at Violet's. I needed to talk to you. Make it quick. I have a 9 a.m. I plated his eggs, scrambled, just how he liked them, and set them in front of him. "I wanted to apologize," I said. "For the other night, I was out of line." He looked up, surprised. "Oh? I shouldn't have accused you of having an affair. I was jealous and insecure. I'm sorry." Malcolm relaxed slightly, his guard dropping. "Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I wanted to give you something." I reached into my apron and pulled out the manila envelope, set it next to his plate. "What's this?" "Open it." He did. His face went white as he read the cover sheet. "Petition for divorce?" Malcolm's voice cracked on the last word. "Keep reading," I said calmly, leaning against the counter. His hands were shaking as he flipped through the pages. Domestic violence, adultery, fraud, dissipation of marital assets. What the fuck is this, Raina? It's the truth. All of it. Documented, photographed, recorded, and verified. You can't, this is you, have no proof of ext. "Actually," I interrupted, pulling out my phone, "I have mountains of proof." I showed him the screen. Photos of his bruises on my body. Screenshots of emails between him and Simone. Bank statements showing the theft of my inheritance. "Every penny you stole," I said. "Every lie you told. Every time you hit me. All of it. Documented and ready to present in court." Malcolm stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been protecting myself. This is entrapment. Illegal recording. New York is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of, and I've been recording for months, Malcolm. Every threat, every instance of abuse, including 2 nights ago when you grabbed my throat and slapped me." His face turned from white to red. "You bitch. Read the rest of the papers, particularly the part about the protective order hearing this afternoon, and the part where I'm requesting 50% ownership of Northwood Consulting. That's my company, built with my inheritance. My father's money you stole from me to start a business with your mistress. You can't prove. I can prove everything. Bank records, incorporation documents, financial statements. Elena Briggs is a very thorough attorney." At Elena's name, Malcolm's face went even redder. "Briggs? You hired that barracuda?" "I hired the best, because I deserve the best. Something you forgot years ago." He started toward me, and I saw the violence in his eyes, but I didn't back up, didn't flinch. I just pointed at the refrigerator. "There's a camera recording us right now. From the moment you walked in, every word you've said, every threat you're about to make, all recorded and ready to be submitted as evidence." Malcolm froze, his eyes darting to where I pointed. He saw the phone, the red recording light. "So I suggest you sit down and finish reading," I said, "because it gets better." He sank back into his chair like a puppet with cut strings. "The protective order means you have 24 hours to vacate the apartment," I continued. "You can stay in a hotel, or with Simone. I don't care. But you're not staying here. This is my apartment. This is our apartment. Paid for with marital assets. And as of this afternoon, if the judge grants the order, it's my apartment until the divorce is finalized." "You can't do this." "I already did." Malcolm's hands were shaking as he turned to the next page. His eyes scanned the list of marital assets I was claiming. The apartment, his car, half his retirement accounts, half his stock options from the firm, spousal support, and 50% ownership of Northwood Consulting. "This is everything," he whispered. "You're trying to take everything. I'm taking what I'm entitled to. What you would have left me with nothing while you started a new life with Simone. How did you—" "I heard the recording, Malcolm. The one where you and Simone discussed how easy it would be to divorce me because I'm broken and have no fight left. The one where you laughed about how I'd sign whatever you put in front of me." His face crumpled. "Raina, please. We can work this out. We don't need lawyers and courts. Let's just talk, the two of us. We're past talking. I'll change. I'll end things with Simone. We can start over. You should have thought of that before you hit me, before you stole from me, before you spent 3 years fucking another woman with my dead father's money. It was a mistake. It was a choice, hundreds of choices, over years, to lie and steal and hurt me." Malcolm stood up again, his expression shifting from panic to anger. "Fine, fine. You want to play hardball? I'll play. I have lawyers too, Raina. Good ones, better than yours. I'll fight you on every single thing. The apartment, the business, the money, all of it. Go ahead, fight. It'll just give me more time to gather evidence, more chances for you to incriminate yourself. Elena would love that. You're making a mistake. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Is that a threat, Malcolm? Because remember, we're being recorded." He looked at the camera again, then back at me, and I saw the exact moment he realized he'd lost. "I need to call my lawyer," he said hoarsely. "Good idea. You're going to need one." He grabbed his phone and walked out of the kitchen. I heard him on the phone in the bedroom, his voice rising and falling in panic. I stood there in the kitchen, my hands steady for the first time in years, and waited. 20 minutes later, Malcolm came back out. He'd put on his jacket, grabbed his briefcase. "I'm leaving," he said. "See you in court." He stopped at the door, turned back. "You know what the worst part is? I actually loved you once, before you became this paranoid, bitter person. I became this person because of you. But don't worry, I'm about to become someone much better." He left without another word. The moment the door closed, Elena came in from the hallway where she'd been waiting. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it. 8 years of fear and pain and self-doubt, 8 years of being small and quiet and obedient, all of it, ending this morning over scrambled eggs and divorce papers. "Free," I said. "I feel free." The protective order hearing was at 2 p.m. that afternoon. Malcolm showed up with his lawyer, an expensive-looking man in his 60s named Bernard Crestwood. But our evidence was overwhelming. The medical records, the photographs of injuries in various stages of healing, the recordings of Malcolm's threats and violence, Dr. Harrison's testimony about the pattern of abuse. The judge, a woman in her 50s with no-nonsense demeanor, granted the emergency protective order within 30 minutes. "Mr. Northwood," she said, looking at Malcolm with clear disgust, "you are to vacate the marital residence within 24 hours. You are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Northwood except through your attorneys. You are to stay at least 500 feet away from her at all times. Do you understand?" "Your Honor, this is based on one-sided testimony," Crestwood began. "Counselor, I've reviewed the medical evidence and listened to the recordings. Your client threatened and assaulted his wife on multiple occasions. The order stands. Anything else to discuss?" There wasn't. Malcolm left the courthouse looking shell-shocked. I left with Elena, victorious but exhausted. "That's round 1, Elena said. "Now comes the hard part." But the fallout had only just begun. That evening, while Malcolm was presumably packing his things at the apartment, his firm received the full investigative report from their internal review. The one Marcus's anonymous tip had triggered. Richard Aldridge, Malcolm's managing partner, called an emergency meeting. According to the friend I'd made on Malcolm's assistant, a sharp young woman named Jessica, who Malcolm had treated like dirt for years, the meeting was brutal. They had everything, Jessica told me over coffee the next day, her eyes bright with barely suppressed glee. The client list, the incorporation documents, proof that he'd been using firm resources to build a competing company. They asked him point blank if he'd violated his non-compete, and he tried to deny it, but they had copies of his emails, his business registration, everything. What happened? They fired him. Effective immediately. Walked him out of the building with security, and they're suing him, both him and Simone, for breach of contract, theft of trade secrets, and fraud. Simone too? Oh yeah. She was in on it. They fired her too, and the lawsuit is for $2 million in damages. My head spun. Malcolm and Simone both fired, both being sued, both facing financial ruin. There's more, Jessica said, leaning forward conspiratorially. Richard called all three of the clients Malcolm and Simone had stolen, told them the whole story. Two of them immediately terminated their contracts with Northwood Consulting. The third is considering a lawsuit of their own for being defrauded. So, Malcolm's business, the one he'd built with my money, the one he'd risked everything for, was imploding. Perfect. The next blow came from an unexpected source, Simone herself. 3 days after the protective order was granted, Simone showed up at Elena's office. She looked different from the polished professional I'd seen in Marcus's photos. No makeup, hair unwashed, yoga pants, and a sweatshirt. "I need to make a statement," she said. "About Malcolm, about everything." Elena called me, asked if I wanted to be present. I did. Simone wouldn't look at me when I walked into the conference room. She sat hunched in her chair, hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee. "Talk," Elena said. "He lied to me," Simone began, her voice small. "About everything. He said he was getting divorced, that you were separated, that you'd agreed to everything. It was just paperwork." "When did the affair start?" I asked. 4 years ago. We met at a firm retreat. He pursued me aggressively. I resisted at first because he was married, but he said the marriage was over, that you were just roommates at that point." "And the business?" "That was his idea. He said he had access to capital. I didn't know it was your inheritance. He told me it was money he'd saved and invested. He convinced me we could build something together, that we'd be partners in business and in life." "Did he ever hit you?" Elena asked. Simone finally looked up, met my eyes, and I saw the answer before she spoke. "Twice. Both times when I pushed him about leaving you. He said I was being needy, that I needed to be patient. The second time, she touched her collarbone. He grabbed me here, slammed me against a wall, told me if I ever gave him an ultimatum again, he'd make sure I lost everything." "When was this?" 2 weeks ago. Right around the time he'd started talking about separating from me. He'd been managing both of us, keeping us both under control through fear and manipulation. "I'm sorry," Simone said, and now there were tears running down her face. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know about the abuse. I didn't know he was stealing from you. I thought, God, I was so stupid. I thought we were building a future." I could have hated her. Should have, maybe. But looking at her sitting there, broken and crying, I just felt tired. "He's good at lying," I said. "He had me convinced I was the problem for 8 years. "I'll testify," Simone said, looking at Elena. "Whatever you need. Bank records, emails, texts. I'll give you everything. He destroyed my career, my reputation. I want him to pay." "Good," Elena said, "because we're going to need all of it." Simone's testimony and evidence were devastating. She had emails where Malcolm explicitly discussed hiding assets from me, text messages where he called me vile names and talked about how easy it would be to divorce me once he'd transferred enough money out of my reach. Financial records showing he'd convinced her to invest $50,000 of her own money in the business, promising it would make them both rich. All of it painting a picture of a man who used everyone around him, who lied and manipulated and abused to get what he wanted. The criminal charges came next. I filed a police report detailing the abuse, providing all the evidence. The DA's office took one look at the medical records, the recordings, and the photographs, and charged Malcolm with assault, harassment, and menacing. He was arrested on a Friday afternoon, right in the middle of a meeting with his lawyer about the firm's lawsuit. Jessica sent me the news with a string of celebration emojis. Malcolm made bail within hours. His parents mortgaged their house to cover it, but the damage was done. His arrest made the news. Not front page, but enough that everyone in his professional circle knew. The divorce proceedings moved forward. Malcolm fought everything, just like he'd promised, but his position got weaker with every piece of evidence we introduced. The apartment? Mine. Because he'd violated the protective order by showing up drunk one night and pounding on the door, screaming threats. The judge extended the order and gave me sole possession of the marital residence. His retirement accounts? Split 50-50, as per New York law. The cars? I got the newer one. He got the old sedan with 100,000 miles on it. And Northwood Consulting? That was the crown jewel. Elena argued that Malcolm had used $223,000 of marital funds to start and run the business without my knowledge or consent. She argued that constituted fraud and conversion of marital assets. She had Simone testify about Malcolm's explicit intention to hide the business from me until after the divorce. The judge ruled in our favor. I was awarded 60% ownership of Northwood Consulting, plus $50,000 in compensatory damages for Malcolm's fraudulent depletion of marital assets. Malcolm's face when the judge read that ruling was something I'll never forget. He looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. But the business was worthless by then anyway. With no clients, with both founders fired and sued by their former employer, with mounting legal debts, Northwood Consulting was a shell. We agreed to dissolve it and split whatever assets remained. After legal fees and debts, that came to about $35,000. Still, I'd made my point. The final divorce decree came through 4 months after I'd served him breakfast and divorce papers. I was awarded. The apartment valued at $800,000, $125,000 from Malcolm's retirement accounts. The newer car. $50,000 in compensatory damages. $3,000 per month in spousal support for 3 years. My 60% ownership stake in the dissolved business. All told, I walked away with about $1.2 million in assets and cash. Malcolm walked away with legal bills exceeding $300,000. No job, no business, a criminal record, and the prospect of years of spousal support payments he could barely afford. His parents had to sell their house to cover his debts. Simone refused to speak to him after she found out he'd lied to her about everything. His professional reputation was destroyed. No reputable firm would hire him after the breach of contract and theft of clients. Last I heard, he was working in sales at a mid-tier company, making maybe $60,000 a year, living in a studio apartment in New Jersey. Every month, like clockwork, I received the spousal support check. I never cashed them. I didn't need his money. I had my own now. Instead, I donated each check to a domestic violence shelter in Brooklyn. Let his money do some good for once. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in my apartment, no longer ours, and barely recognized the space. I'd redecorated completely, painted the walls a warm cream instead of Malcolm's preferred stark white, bought furniture I loved instead of furniture that impressed his colleagues, hung my own art, filled the bookshelves with books I actually wanted to read. It felt like home. Finally, Violet came over for dinner that night, bringing wine and updates about her life. We sat on my new couch, a ridiculously comfortable sectional in deep blue velvet that Malcolm would have hated, and talked until midnight. "You look different," she said at one point, studying my face. "Happy, actually happy." I am, I realized. I really am. The criminal case against Malcolm had ended in a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault in exchange for probation, anger management classes, and a permanent restraining order. No jail time, but a criminal record that would follow him forever. The lawsuit from his former firm was still ongoing, but their lawyers had informed Elena that they'd likely settle for a structured payment plan since Malcolm was essentially judgment-proof. You can't get blood from a stone, and Malcolm was definitely stone broke. Simone had moved to California, taking a position with a startup that didn't know about the scandal. She'd sent me a card for Christmas with a simple message: "Thank you for being stronger than I was." I'm sorry for my part in your pain. I'd thrown the card away. I didn't need her apologies or her gratitude. I just needed her gone from my life. As for me, I'd gone back to work. The Museum of Contemporary Art had hired me as their senior curator, a position that came with real authority and a salary that meant I'd never depend on anyone else again. My boss, a whip-smart woman named Dr. Patricia Chen, knew my story. She'd Googled me during the interview process and had hired me anyway. "You took control of your life," she'd said. "That's exactly the kind of backbone we need here." I loved the work, loved being surrounded by art again, by creativity and passion and ideas, loved having colleagues who respected my opinions, who valued my expertise, loved having my own money, my own schedule, my own life. I'd reconnected with old friends from grad school, people I'd lost touch with during the Malcolm years. We met for brunch, went to gallery openings, took weekend trips to museums in other cities. I was building a life that was entirely mine. One evening, my mother called from Florida. "How are you, honey?" she asked, and I could hear the worry in her voice. She'd been asking me that question every few days since the divorce, like she expected me to fall apart. "I'm good, Mom, really good." "You're not just saying that?" "I promise. I'm happy. I have a job I love, an apartment I love, friends, freedom. I'm really okay." There was a pause. Then, "Your father would be proud of how you fought for yourself, how you didn't let Malcolm destroy you." Tears pricked my eyes. Dad had died early in my marriage, never knowing what Malcolm would become, but I liked to think he would have approved of how it ended. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story gave you the justice you needed to see, check out the other videos on screen. They're just as satisfying. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? See you in the next story. A year after the divorce, I was at a fundraiser for the museum when I met Daniel. He was there with his sister, who sat on the museum's board, tall, maybe 40, with kind eyes and an easy smile. We started talking by the bar and ended up in a corner for the rest of the night, conversation flowing effortlessly. "So what do you do?" he asked at one point. "I'm a curator here, contemporary art." "Ah, so you're responsible for that incredible exhibition on the third floor, the one about urban decay and renewal? You've seen it?" "Twice. The juxtaposition of the photographs with the sculpture installations is brilliant. We talked about art, about the city, about everything and nothing. When the night ended, he asked for my number. I hesitated, not because I didn't like him, but because I wasn't sure I was ready. "I've been through a difficult divorce," I said. "I'm not sure I'm in a place to date anyone yet." "That's fair," he said. "How about we start with coffee? As friends, no pressure, no expectations, just two people who like art and conversation." I smiled. "Coffee I can do." We met for coffee 3 days later, then lunch the next week, then a walk through Central Park. Each time, easy and comfortable, and completely different from the intensity of Malcolm's pursuit. Daniel was patient. He didn't push, didn't demand, didn't try to make decisions for me. When I said I needed to go slow, he respected it. When I canceled plans because I was having a rough day, the anniversary of a particularly bad beating, a triggering interaction with Malcolm's lawyer, he simply said, "Whenever you're ready." It took 3 months before I let him kiss me. 6 months before I invited him back to my apartment. A year before I told him I loved him. "I don't want to rush anything," I said one evening as we sat on my couch, my head on his shoulder. "I need to be sure this time. Really sure." "Take all the time you need," he replied, pressing a kiss to my hair. "I'm not going anywhere." And he wasn't. Daniel was steady, reliable, kind. Everything Malcolm had pretended to be but never was. We've been together 2 years now. Living separately still, I'm not ready to give up my hard-won independence, and he understands that. But we talk about the future sometimes. About, maybe, someday, building something together. The difference is that with Daniel, it's a conversation, not a decree. A shared decision, not a unilateral demand. That's how I know it's real. I saw Malcolm one last time, about 18 months after the divorce was finalized. I was at a coffee shop near the museum, reading a book and enjoying my lunch hour, when he walked in. He looked older, tired. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by off-the-rack business casual. His hair was thinning. He'd gained weight. He saw me immediately. I watched the recognition flash across his face, followed by shame, anger, fear. He started to leave, but I called out, "Malcolm!" He stopped, turned around slowly. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. "I don't think." "Sit." He sat. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. This man who had controlled 8 years of my life, who had hit me, stolen from me, systematically destroyed my sense of self-worth. He looked so small now. "How are you?" I asked. "Does it matter?" "Not particularly. I'm just being polite." He laughed, a bitter sound. "Polite, right. I heard you're working in sales now." "Yeah, medical devices." "It's fine." "And the lawsuits?" "Still paying them off. Will be for years." He looked at me. "You happy now? You destroyed my life." "No, Malcolm, you destroyed your life. I just refuse to let you destroy mine too. I loved you once. Maybe, in your own broken way, but love doesn't look like what you did to me. Love doesn't steal and hit and manipulate. I was under so much pressure. Don't." I held up a hand. "Don't make excuses. I'm not here for your excuses or your apologies. I don't need them. I just wanted you to see me, really see me. The woman you thought you'd broken. The one who was supposed to sign whatever you put in front of her and disappear quietly." I stood up, gathering my things. "I'm a senior curator now. I make 6 figures. I have an apartment worth almost $1 million. I have friends, a life, someone who treats me the way I deserve to be treated. And you? You'll spend the next decade paying off debts and spousal support, working a job you hate, living in a studio apartment, watching everyone you know succeed while you fail." I leaned down, spoke directly into his ear. "I want you to think about this every single day. Think about what you lost. Think about what you could have had if you'd just been a decent human being. Think about how your own cruelty, your own greed, your own violence destroyed everything you built." I straightened up, shouldered my bag. "That's my revenge, Malcolm. Not the divorce settlement, not the criminal charges, not the ruined career. My revenge is living well, living fully, living free of you." I walked to the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Malcolm, thank you." "For what?" I smiled. "For failing, for being exactly who you were. Because that breakfast, the one where I served you divorce papers, that was the day I got my life back. That was the day I became who I was always meant to be. So thank you for being such a spectacular failure as a husband. You set me free." I left him sitting there, walked out into the bright afternoon sun, and didn't look back. Not once. Because Malcolm Northwood was my past. And my past had no power over me anymore. I had won. Not just the divorce, not just the settlement, but something bigger. I had won myself back. And that was worth more than any amount of money, any amount of revenge, any amount of satisfaction at his downfall. I was free. Truly. Completely free. And I was never going to be anyone's victim again. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.